Well, it isn't obvious to me that I'm in any position to evaluate Elon Musk. Like, I would like to talk to him and find out what he's up to and why, but I mean, he's an impossible person. What he's done is impossible. All of it. It's like he built an electric car that works. Now, does it work completely and will it replace gas cars, or should it? I don't know. But if we're going to build electric cars, he seems to be the best at that by a lot. And he more or less did that. People carp about him, but he more or less did that by himself. I know he's very good at distributing responsibility and all of that, but he's the spearhead. And then that was pretty hard. And then he built a rocket at like 1/10 the price of NASA rockets. And then he shot his car out into space. That's pretty hard. And then he's building this boring company. It's this whimsical joke in some sense, but it's not a joke. He's amazing.
There was a recent interview with Elon Musk where he said something, "My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me.
Right.
They may think they would want to be me, but they don't. They don't know. They don't understand." Mm-hmm. What do you think of that? Elon's someone that people probably look up to and admire and aspire to be.
One of the downsides to high-level genius is you might describe it as hypomania. So here's a simple test that people can do. So this is a test of something called verbal fluency, and verbal fluency is associated with creativity. And so here's a simple verbal fluency test. Write down as many 4-letter words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with T. That's pretty constrained, 4 letters and T. Or write down as many words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with S. That's less constrained. There's quite a powerful correlation between the sheer number of words that you produce and your lifetime creative achievement, especially in the artistic and verbal domains. That's different than vocabulary. Vocabulary is how many words you understand. Fluency is how many words you can produce in a given amount of time.
Deployment of those words. Yeah.
Well, people vary to a degree that you can hardly imagine. So some people, if you get them to do the 4-letter test in 3 minutes, they'll write down like 12 words, and some will write down 150. The ones who are writing down 150, their minds are going at a hypomanic rate. They're just thinking 5 times as fast without any remission whatsoever. You know, when that gets completely out of control, you have manic. You have someone who's manic, and there's nothing fun about manic. That's where the word maniac comes from. And someone who's manic has 1,000 different plans, each of which are 1 sentence long, that they're hyper enthusiastic about. They'll spend every cent of their money pursuing them, and things just go immediately to hell. And so that's the outer limit of pathology on the creative front. And someone like Musk, who's clearly a genius, that's what he's contending with in his internal landscape. Now, I'm not saying that he's manic, because I see no signs of that, but someone that creative is on that edge. Or you see someone like Ben Shapiro. I mean, it's very interesting to talk to Ben, because Shapiro speaks, I think, more rapidly than anyone I ever met. But if you're with him, you see very clearly that he's probably thinking 5 times that fast. And that's a lot. And when I was writing Maps of Meaning, which was my first book, I had a very difficult time shutting off my mind. I was obsessed with that book. And so I was writing about 3 hours a day. And then I was thinking about the material for 12 hours. And the thoughts came as way faster than thinking. They probably came about as fast as I can read. I can read about 1,200 words a minute if the material isn't overwhelmingly dense. And so it was just non-stop thought for like 16 hours a day. That's part of the reason I started lifting weights, because if I was lifting heavy enough weights,
can't be thinking at 1,200 words a minute while I've got 100 pounds on my back.
It was It was enough to shut it down.
Yeah.
And it was also one of the reasons that I drank, because that was another thing that would shut it off.
Yeah. Well, I think the price that people pay to be the person that you admire is just such an interesting frame to look at someone like Elon Musk. My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me. The price that you would have to pay in order to be me is not one that you would. But you're one of the richest men on the planet, and you get to, dance on stage and release cars that are bulletproof and put rockets in space and stuff. Well, yeah, but what about all of the baggage? What's the price? What's the entry price?
He also appears to me to be hyper conscientious, and I know people who've worked with him. Musk isn't just a creative genius. He's also an extremely conscientious engineer, and really conscientious engineers, they have very interesting minds. I like talking to engineers because my brother-in-law is a great engineer, and when he understands something, he understands how to build it out of atoms. right? Like he understands it at every single level. And Musk appears to me to be someone who's this rare combination of hyper creative, but also hyper conscientious. And I know that he works all the time.
Yeah, does that sort of hypertrophied executive function help to wrangle some of the diffuse creative energy? Oh, we're going to put it into this one thing, at least for a while, and then we'll move on to another thing.
Yes, definitely. Musk is hyper creative, and as far as I can tell, hyper conscientious. And the conscientiousness does focus. Lots of people who are creative aren't conscientious. Well, it's rare. Like if you're there's no correlation between creativity and conscientiousness. If you're the most creative person in 1,000 and you're the most conscientious person in 1,000, you're one person in 1,000,000. And Musk is probably more like one person in 100 million, something like that, maybe more, or maybe 1 billion, right? Maybe.
Most people's hierarchies are actually quite small. They sort of consist of the people that they compare themselves to, which is a strange thing too, because one of the things that you see happening with really successful people is they actually don't get a lot happier and a lot less unhappy as they climb the broad social ladder, because the people they compare themselves to change. And so I can tell you a funny story about this. So I know this guy. I worked with him for a long time. His name is Adeo Resi. And he's a hell of a guy. He's like 6'7", and he's like really charismatic, and he's been pretty successful. He built this company in San Francisco called Founder Institute, and it's only one of many things he's done. And it's operating in 165 cities. It's a school to teach people how to be entrepreneurs. He's trying to export Silicon Valley, what would you call it, know-how, technological and financial, to the rest of the world. And in like 5 years, he built 165 schools, not physical schools, but school-like organizations around the world. And like, go try that. Like, that's really hard, Just to build one is hard, but to do that in multiple languages all over the world, it's bloody well impossible. And then at the same time, he built his organization, started 2,500 successful companies as a consequence of building this school. That's pretty good, and he was having a rough time and was talking to me on the phone about, he wasn't so happy about what he'd done with his life. And he said, geez, I compare myself with my roommate, and, I've hardly done anything. And his roommate was Elon Musk. It's like, I just laughed at him. I thought, geez, really? That's what you haven't done anything compared to Elon Musk, and you're depressed about it. It's like, yeah, well, you and the rest of the planet. I mean, look, what did Musk what did he do? He invented an electric car. That's impossible. Then he made it work. That's impossible. And then he built an entire infrastructure to charge it, and that worked, and that's impossible. And they're good cars. And then he made them faster than any cars have ever been, and cheap, and so that's impossible. And then that wasn't good enough, so then he decided that he would compete with NASA, which is impossible, and build rockets at 1/10 the price they were building them, except bigger. And then he would shoot his car on his rocket out into space. Right. And he did all that. And it's like Adeo was thinking, oh, I've hardly done anything with my life. It's like, oh. So, but my point is that, primates of our type sort of have a group size that we think about as our group of about 200 people. So like on Facebook, for example, the probability that you're in something approximating reasonable, constant communication with more than 200 people is low. You just don't have the time, and you can't keep track of it. So our natural group is something like 200, and our groups tend to fragment when they get bigger than that. And that's also associated, by the way, with cortical size. You see this in primates, is that as primates develop larger brains, the group size that they seem to be able to manage also increases, and that might be part of the reason why they develop larger brains. Who knows? And the problem is that as you get more successful, say, in the global hierarchy of 100 million people, the 200 people that you compare yourself changes, and so that you end up with $100 million, and you're not very happy because your $50 million yacht is like 20 feet shorter than your friend's, $150 million yacht. And you're high in neuroticism, so that makes you frustrated and disappointed, So it's important to understand. It's the message here, the point of this is that you have a system, this serotonin system, base of your neurophysiology. It also sets your brain up during embryonic development. So it really is the master control system in many, many ways. And it counts where you are in your hierarchy. And then it decides how much positive emotion and how much negative emotion you should feel on average because of your position. And so like if you're, let's say number 1 is at the top and number 10 is at the bottom. So you're number 10, you're barely clinging to the bottom of reality. Your brain says, look, it's dangerous where you are at the bottom of the hierarchy. You don't have a lot of friends. It's precarious down there. And so that means any little thing that goes wrong, any little error you make, that might be the end of you. And so you better be on guard and alert. And if something small happens, it better hurt, because it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And there's nothing pleasant about that.
World's richest man saying he wants to restore truth to Twitter and trust to Twitter.
Yeah.
It's the public square now. It's how people communicate, find news. You were personally impacted by Twitter's left-leaning, censorious ways. You've now been restored. What impact do you think Twitter becoming an even playing field will have for...
Who knows? I mean, I'm hoping... I know people who know Elon Musk very well, who've worked for him, and these are very able people, to say the least. And they really admire him. He has the ability to do exactly what he did. He went into Twitter and he said, he's a good observer of the Pareto principle. A small minority of people do all the productive work. It's like, all you people, you're gone. And he just does it. It's like, and everybody who's whiny and complaining whines and complains about that. And no doubt some people who were doing a credible job were also let go, because it's a pretty broad swath, let's say. But he's got rid of 75% of the people, and Twitter is still working.
With record traffic.
Right, exactly. And apparently he's also put the boots to the people who are trafficking in child sexual exploitation already.
Incredible.
2 weeks. Right, no kidding. Incredible in 2 ways. Incredible that he did it, but even more incredible that he could do it that fast and that it hadn't been done. And Musk also, it seems to me that the evidence is quite clear that he not only has a pretty good eye, but he is capable of learning. So he'll experiment and he'll learn from his experiments, and we'll see if he can clean up Twitter.
So you took a trip to the Tesla factory. What were your thoughts after meeting Elon Musk? Did you get to speak to him much?
I wouldn't say much. We spoke probably for 20 minutes in total, not purely privately because there's other people around, but that just barely gets you to know the surface of someone like Musk, because he's an amazing person, and God only knows what's up with him, all things considered. We saw his new truck. He was taking people out for a ride. I didn't go out for a ride. The truck's an amazing piece of engineering. The factory is massive. What do you say about someone who built a functional electric car and then shot it into space on a rocket? He's a singular person. But I thought it went very well. It was a very interesting evening. So I was pleased to be there, and we sort of walked around each other a bit, and it was just fine.
Do you guys interact a fair bit on Twitter?
We seem to, yeah.
What do you think that is? Why are you converging?
I don't know exactly. We're both well known, and I suppose to some degree that increases the probability of that kind of convergence. But maybe he's aiming up. Me too. Seems to be.
He's aiming up literally. He's aiming up very literally, yeah.
Definitely.
Didn't he wasn't there a model of a spaceman in the driver's seat of the car that he put out into space?
Oh, that's certainly possible. He's got a theatrical twist. There's no doubt about that. And a great sense of humor, because that's really funny to shoot your own car out into space on a rocket.
Needlessly.
That's a pretty damn good joke.
Well, why is it that someone like Elon has got himself to the stage where he can say things that almost every other CEO, he's the richest man on the planet.
I don't think he's got himself to that stage. I think he's always done that, and so now he still knows how to do it. I mean, people think I'll say what I have to say when I get to the point where I'm protected and secure. It's like, first of all, being protected and secure does not give you the courage to say what you have to say. That theory couldn't be more backwards. You think you're going to get braver and braver as you get more and more protected? You think that's how the world works? I mean, I've watched university professors think that at some point they're going to say what they think as they develop their career, but by the time they're protected and secure, they've spent so much time not saying what they think that they aren't even who they were and they don't know what they think. So, no, he says what he says because he's always done that. And people who are like him are like that. And so Steve Jobs, I presume, was exactly the same way. I mean, I know people who knew him. He always said what he thought. And he was pretty damn cut and dried about it, which is why the Apple products are such miracles of technological mastery. He had an unbelievably canny design eye and he cut whole projects without a second thought in some sense when they weren't working.
He did that when he came back to Apple the second time, refined the entire product line, got rid of a ton of different things, and so we're focusing on this. Yeah.
Right. So that was proof. I mean, maybe it was fluke the first time, which it wasn't, but coming back and doing it again the second time showed pretty clearly it wasn't fluke.
Same with Elon, right? He's refined down what he does to a couple of very, very tight parameters.
Well, he seems to have, although the enterprise he's put together is unbelievably high functioning. I mean, to produce an automobile sub-industry that's actually competitive and to bring down the cost of space exploration by a factor of 10 and to invent reusable rockets and to have developed this boring technology, it's miraculous. He's probably an alien.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
There's only two
probably a reptilian, isn't
American car companies, I think, that haven't gone bust. Ford and Tesla. And Tesla came very close a number of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment. Go Elon, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, he's a remarkable person.
What do you make of Elon Musk? You've spoken about him a bit. You met him.
Struck with admiration. That's what I make of him. And I always think of that as a primary. Well, it's like, do you find this comedian funny? It's like, well, I laugh at him. You know what I mean? It's not propositional again. And so there are things I would like to ask Mr. Musk about. The Mars venture, I don't know what he's up to there. It strikes me as absurd in the most fundamental sense, because I think, well, it'd be easier just to build an outpost in the Antarctica or in the desert.
Well, how much of the human endeavor is absurd?
Well, that's what did Nietzsche say? Great men are seldom credited with their stupidity. Who the hell knows what Musk is up to? I mean, obviously he's building rockets. Now, he's motivated because he wants to build a platform for life on Mars. Is that a good idea? Who am I to say? He's building the rockets, man, but I'd like to ask him about it.
I would like to see that conversation. I do think that, having talked to him quite a bit offline, I think several of his ideas, like Mars, like humans becoming a multiplanetary species, could be one of the things that human civilization looks back at as, duh, I can't believe he is one of the few people that was really pushing this idea, because it's the obvious thing for society, for life to survive.
Yeah, well, it isn't obvious to me that I'm in any position to evaluate Elon Musk. Go Elon, as far as I'm concerned. And then, he puts his finger on things so oddly. The problem is underpopulation. It's like, I think so too. I think it's a terrible problem that the West, for example, is no longer at replacement with regard to birth rate. It means we've abandoned the virgin and the child in a most fundamental sense. It's a bloody catastrophe. And Musk, he sees it clear as can be. It's like, well, and where everyone else is running around going, oh, there's too many people. It's like, nope. See, I've learned that there are falsehoods and lies, and there are anti-truths. And an anti-truth is something that's so preposterous that you couldn't make a claim that's more opposite to the truth. And the claim that there are too many people on the planet is an anti-truth. So, people say, well, you have to accept limits to growth and et cetera. It's like, I have to accept the limits that you're going to impose on me because you're frightened of the future. That's your theory, is it? Okay.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, a lot of social media platforms. That's how we communicate now. That's like the public forum. That's our voice.
Yeah.
So our voice is really kind of it's owned by a player. I don't know if it's owned, but it's
no, it's owned.
The space where it's almost like it feels like the paper is owned. You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
Well, you really saw that with Twitter, especially before Musk took it over. I mean,
oh,
people were
yeah, it was
manipulating
unbelievable.
Twitter. It was,
it was compromised by the government. It was unbelievable.
Well,
But
and that's, yeah. And,
now
you know,
it's
and
like,
Facebook has been objecting, too, to all the pressure that's been put on them to censor. And,
Yeah.
you know, you have it's a public forum and it's democratized, but as you said, it's also centralized, right? And the fact that it's centralized means that it's instantly amenable to state control, and that's been happening to an immense degree. I mean, that's part of the reason, I think, the fact that Musk has escaped from that and also put his middle finger up against it is part of the reason he's being targeted by the Department of Justice right now for you know, not hiring people that it would have been illegal under their laws to hire.
that to me is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, it just doesn't. It's just like what a crazy thing to even chase somebody down about.
Yeah,
Like,
well, they say the process is the punishment, right? The World Bank already estimated that we've put 350 million people into what they call food insecurity. 350 million. That's 3 times as many as the communists managed to kill. Maybe we can manage that in a winter. But the planet has too many people on it anyway, so, you know, that's just poor people. So.
You agree with Elon Musk that we should have more people, not less?
I see humans as a net good. I know from Marion Tupy, a man who just wrote a book called Superabundance. He's done the economic calculations, and he calculated that every single baby born now will produce 7 times as many resources as they will consume. And you think, well, how can that be? It's like, well, it's not a zero-sum game, folks. And maybe there's enough to go around. Well, there is. Maybe there's more than enough to go around because we can become hyper-efficient. And you think, well, what's the evidence for that? It's like, well, there's twice as many people as there were when I was a kid, and everyone's way richer. So how about that for evidence?